Now that we have her valise finished, it's time to start working on Celine's wardrobe. It's going to fill the valise, or you can have your dresses on other dolls. But I want to show you what we are going to be doing in the next few hours. And here is the inside of your valise finished. And then we'll be doing the little silk ruffle dress, which is the one that she was in the picture. And then we're going to do the dress with the diagonal trim, which is right out of Poopy Model. And then we're going to do the plastron front dress that has the cute little pleated back to it and darling little buttons. And then we're going to make a couple hats. So we're going to do a straw hat out of vintage straw, simply and sewn, not glued. And then we're going to do a toque that matches her plastron. And this is the instruction page on that. And then there's a pair of shoes. But what you don't see is we're going to start with the underwear, because that is the basis.
Everybody loves to do the underwear.
Oh, yeah. And for this, they are simple. I mean, they are very simple, and they should be very simple. I used a very fine muslin for see-through that reminds me a lot of what are in the old dolls. But there are a couple of things I want to talk about before we start. I start my instruction on the wardrobe with general instructions for sewing on small garments successfully. That's the key. So since we are only working in 6.5 or 6 inches, you have to be accurate. That is utmost important. Any little deviation means that dress will either be too big or too small. So follow the seam allowance exactly, and I will say it's not usually a quarter. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. Also, we use very lightweight fabrics so we don't have any bulk, because you don't want multiple layers to be standing out in your clothes. You want the clothes to fit. They actually have kind of a casual, loose kind of a fit on the mignonettes. They're usually not tight. And you'll be underlining those very lightweight fabrics to give you more body. Fabric frays easily on some of the fabrics, and in order to stop that, I found that working with this clear nail polish does seal a little bit of the raveling, especially around the armholes, and I'm going to show you how to do that without making a mess. So we will go over that. Hand sewing is always preferable on small dolls because it's not as stiff as a machine. A machine stitches an interlock, and it gives a stiffness to the seam that hand sewing does not. And on the end of your instructions, I've given you a whole sheet on basic stitches that we will be using, and what the demo is on a running stitch, a running back stitch, a overcasting stitch, those kinds of things. And then press as you go. Really, really important on any sewing, but on these little ones, very important. So we're going to be using, in some cases, a steam iron, some cases a dry iron, and these little sewing forms.
Aren't they called hams?
Hams, yes.
They're little hams.
They're little hams.
Little hamlets.
Little hamlets. They will fit into your armholes and places where you're pressing that you don't want to press it flat. You'll press it flat here without pressing it flat on the big piece. So anyway, we're going to be using these. And then be sure you press every piece that comes out of the kit. I think I said that on the valise instructions as well.
Before you cut it.
Before you cut it. You want it nice and smooth.
Don't you
wrinkles.
believe, Cheryl, that the cutting of it accurately is as important as the seam allowance?
Oh, yes. Totally. That was my number one instruction, was accuracy is critical when you're cutting and sewing these. So each of my kits has a little label on it. So this will be our underwear kit, which consists of this sheer muslin that we're using for the underwear, and I did casings on the drawers, if you look, rather than making another waistband, because I've got a little waistband on the petticoat, if you had 2 waistbands here, it puts a lot of bulk. So by running a casing and then a cotton thread, or not thread, cotton ribbon through it, it gives you a fit where you can drop those a little bit or raise those a little bit and just snug it on your doll. So they're very, very simple. I've got, just an opening in the back, and let's get started.
Okay, well, we will clear off this and we will be right back.
Okay, now the first thing we had to do was press, and so I've got this great, if you don't have one of these felt pressing mats, you need it, because especially when you're steaming, it'll go right through the fabric and right into the wool. They're 100% wool, and they really work beautifully.
I love them.
I do too.
I have 2 or 3 of them all over the place.
I do too. Okay, so, in order to get it really all those wrinkles out, we needed a little bit of steam. And
you have a new fancy schmancy steam iron.
I do, because I got tired of replacing my other irons that would leak and spit, which I hated.
I hate that.
I hate that, especially you're trying to steam something on silk and you've got right where you don't want it.
And it's usually in the front.
Yes, of course, always. So anyway, this is a brand you probably may not have heard of. It's called Chi, C-H-I. And it's a titanium ceramic sole plate on it, so that it...
And there's the brand right there. So
yeah,
you can screenshot that, and
yes,
it's got the model. It's 13101.
Okay, and this is a 1700 watt iron, so it's very hot and great. And it not only steams, you can do shot of steam, you can spray, all of that kind of thing. But the nice thing is it does not leak. And I've had mine for about 2 years now, and I think it's the best. Okay, so we have pressed our fabric. Now we're going to cut it out.
Maybe we should put that Weehaw glue away.
Maybe we should. See the Weehaw? This is a very special brand of glue. And what do you say about it?
Well, Michael? No animal was killed making this.
That's true. It's all organic.
It's all organic Weehaw.
Yes. Okay, I've taken the sheet with the pattern pieces for the underwear, and I've cut all the patterns out right on the lines. And then the layout for this, because we need 2 drawers, 1 waistband, and 1 petticoat. So I've taken the piece of fabric and I folded it over to get the two drawers. Like they're gonna sit right there. And then I'll take the 1 petticoat piece and it's just going to lay there. Even though that's going to be cut out, we're going to be throwing that out anyway. So that is the layout. Now we need to pin those in place. And as always, we need to observe grain lines, which making sure this is running on straight grain. I'm just going to put in a couple of pins to hold it, so when I go to cut it, it's going to stay. I like these glass head pins. They're nice and sharp, and Clover sells these. And those are my absolute favorite, because with glass head you can iron over them and they don't melt.
They don't melt. Mm-hmm.
No. Got dog nap time here, so
yes, Annabelle's finally got calm.
Just calm down and going to sleep. All right, I'm going to take our scissors and we're going to cut accurately right next to that pattern. And a lot of times I'll just rough cut these pieces out so that they're easier to handle in the cutting. Yep, looks pretty good.
That's great. I think we have somebody unhappy.
What is that?
Are we not doing this to your satisfaction?
I guess not.
Is life just terrible?
Very strange noise.
You're just not happy?
Well, you know he's really happy when he sticks out his tongue and closes his eyes. He is so cute. Then when we finish this, we're going to switch here so I can sew on my lap, which is much more comfortable for me than sewing on this table. So
Everybody
You'll
has
see a
their
change
own
in
way.
seam.
Yeah, everyone has their own way of doing.
yes.
Their own way. And they've got some nice little scraps there to use for
So true.
various things. That's some
Yeah.
hat interfacing and
Yeah. I probably could have made the layout even closer so that you would have ended up with larger scraps. But actually, this is what I've been using for hat linings because it's
yeah, they're nice
really
pieces.
nice fabrics. Okay.
All right, well, we'll
Here we
get
are.
this set up for the next stage. So we're all cut out.
Now that we've got our pieces cut out, we're going to be following the instructions. Now you'll have the written instructions for you, and you'll also have this video, of course, to refer to, which is really nice, which we can stop and you can go back and review if you don't get it the first time. So the first thing we're going to do is the drawers. So I cut out the drawers, and we have to remember that we have a right and a left leg to begin with. That's very important. So I find the best thing to do is open this up like this, and to be sure that I always have a right and a left, I just put a pin like this so that I know that if I'm working on the side with the pin, that's going to be the right way. So we're going to start out with the instructions by turning up, I think I'll move this up a little bit. We're going to turn up the bottom of the leg. And we're turning it up, the pin's on the right side. We're going to turn it up on the right side and just give yourself a little finger press because this fabric presses really nicely with just a little finger, okay, like that. Do that to both sides. Of course, that establishes now what the right side is anyway. But I'm still going to leave that pin there just
Sure,
for
it's easy to-
security.
But we hate to sew the things together and then go,
And then
"Yikes."
go to put them together and go, oh, I did two of the same side.
I've never, ever done that.
I haven't either. How many of those have you taken out before is a question. So I'm going to grab my bag of lace here. And you can see I'm working on what I call my lap board. This is my cutting board. And at home, this is what I work on every day and every evening especially. While I'm watching TV, I'm sewing. This is my lap, this is my work board. And I either have it on the hard side or on the soft side, depending on what I'm doing. But here we're going to begin by adding the lace to the bottom of the drawers. Right out of the packet, marked underwear. So the first thing we're going to do, there is probably a right and a left side of the lace.
You just have to really feel for that.
And you have to feel for it because the right side is the one with the texture.
And
So
that looks like the right side.
yeah, it is, because this one's much flatter than this side. So the reason we turned it up on the right side is we're going to use this lace to cover up our hem so that just a little bit is going to hang below. And if you want
just a smidgy, huh?
Just a smidgy hanging below. If you want, you can put a couple pins in to get it secured so then you can trim it off. Because you never want to just randomly cut a bit because it doesn't say how many inches I've given you. So you don't want to be lopping off more than you need. So
because
it's always good to measure it. You're going to need it for the whole edge of the petticoat as well as the drawers. And if I've done the kit right, we have enough for the petticoat, which we do with a little leftover.
Perfect.
It's always good to know. So now I've threaded up a couple of needles, and the needles I like to use are those Clover Black Gold because they're really, really sharp.
Yes, and particularly with this small work.
With this small work.
We need sharp.
And I use the needle threader because even with my readers on, I can't do it.
I mean, I couldn't live without that needle threader.
So now we're just going to do a little running stitch here along the top of the heading of the lace. Get rid of that pin so it's not in our way.
And it's just a small little running stitch.
It's just a tiny little running stitch. And we're going to also do the lower edge so that it's completely, that raw edge is completely encased.
So you're going to do two rows of
running stitches. The next row is going to be right on the fold.
And that'll make that's never going to go anywhere.
It's not going anywhere, no.
Well, shall we sew this and then come back and show them the next step?
Absolutely. Okay, now we've got the lace attached to the bottom, like we said, and this, of course, is our right side. I've got one little whisker to trim off here. And then we're going to do a French seam on the crotch seam. So in order to do that, you place wrong sides together first. So this is our right side, because we know that's where our lace is. We put wrong sides together, and we do a nice running back stitch down here, which I've already done for you. So you can see it like that.
Can you just turn it a little bit towards me?
How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Then I'm going to trim these whiskers off now so that we don't have those in the finish. And I'm going to turn the drawers to the wrong side. So now we are right sides together, and ordinarily I'd say get up and press this, but because the fabric is so crispy, you could just finger press it. So do that, and then we're going to come back in and do a nice little probably a running back stitch here because I want this nice and tight.
And Cheryl, you're doing this much, much more professionally than the originals were done.
There wouldn't have been a finished seam.
There would be
No.
barely sewn for these little ones.
That's right. Just big stitches, very quick, Because the dolls, I don't think, were expensive at that point. Very expensive for these little ones. So they had to be economic in doing this. But since we have the ability and we're not,
That's right.
we don't have to make it cheap. We want to make it lovely.
Well, there are some all Biss dolls that have phenomenal wardrobes that are beautifully done, but the commercial ones are pretty.
Yeah.
They're showy and effective and pretty when you look close.
It's a lot of raw edges, a lot of quick stitches, and that kind of thing.
So you're doing this very close.
Yes, I am.
It's almost like piping, isn't it?
Well, by the time you see this, it almost does look like that, doesn't it? So we'll trim this off, and then we're going to turn, which I've already done. I've already turned the other leg, and I see a little whisker here that I missed.
There'll be more.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure there will be. But I just hate threads. I think that's very untidy looking.
It is.
Okay, so now I'm going to put the one leg into the other. Some people don't do this. They do them like flat. They're flat. But there's a big difference between the way this looks.
I've never seen
the
this
body.
technique, but that.
Really?
No, I have not.
Oh, this is.
So I learned something. It's worth the
Hey.
price of admission.
How about that?
Yeah. Actually, it seems that's a time-saving.
It's just
concept.
easier to manage. It's much easier to manage. And then it comes out as two tubes rather than a flat piece going on a round doll. So I do that
I can see it already.
Yeah. So now we're going to sew the crotch seam to the dot in the back. Now if we look at our pattern, we can see that here's our crotch seam, and we're like this. So we've already done this, so now we're just going to sew up to here, right? And then that will give us a nice big opening, because I find when we're using her as our blank mannequin, so that we don't have to mess up the wig. Yes,
She was
this
the
was
first
the
girl.
prototype girl
So
here.
she gets roughed up.
Yeah, so we're going to note that the back is going to be longer than the front. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Which
like
totally,
that.
because
Okay.
we've got to deal with the rear end.
Right, so we know that this is the back, and the dot's going to be right there. So we're only sewing right here. Put a knot in there. Turn to the next page in the instructions.
I mean, I think that sounds complicated, but it's really
No, it's not complicated. Oops, missed my knot here. Okay. We're going to be sewing right here, starting at our dot, and I'm going to do a running back stitch on this too, because it's not going to get any French seam down here, because French seams on these little curves does not work out very well. So
No. And this is an awfully small piece for.
it is for that, but at least we've got our legs nice and neat.
But they could do that, the legs, without doing a French seam.
They could,
Yeah,
sure,
Just have to do a little trimming.
yeah.
The nice thing about having this with the kit is they can do a winter set of underwear. They can do
Yeah.
the seasons. They can do embroideries,
I know,
inserts.
and kinds of fun little decorative things on the underwear. But if you looked at old underwear from Mignonette's, it would be always very basic and
Yeah,
very
cheapo.
plain,
Very
with
cheap.
cheapo fabric.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was just for modesty.
yeah.
We've had quite a few mignonettes with little girl-made wardrobes.
Oh.
And they're always charming.
I'll bet, yes. Well, Poupée Model, that was their deal, was to teach little girls how to sew.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to teach my granddaughter to sew now, and properly, not just her quickie ways, but proper ways to sew.
And is she taking it?
Yes, she is. She is.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, she decided that she wasn't into dolls. She's 12 now. Wasn't into making doll clothes now. She'd like to make clothes for herself. So
Oh, that's
she
fun.
asked for a mannequin, her own size.
Wow.
So she's been designing clothes for her
Wow.
on her mannequin.
Is it
which I
going to
think
be
is
a
really
mannequin
cool.
that's going to grow?
I think it
bigger?
can. Yes, it can get taller and a little wider. Of course, at her size right now, it's quite skinny.
Tiny,
But
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
you know, the way they are. But see what I did with the back here. Okay, before you turn it right side out, we're just going to finish that back seam off by turning it under, very narrow, turning it again, and at least we won't have a raw edge for our casing. There. You see how
So it's
small
just
that
two
is.
little
Two little tiny
tiny.
turn unders.
It's not even worth giving him the measurement.
No, it's not. It's just
Think
small as you
tiny.
can get it.
Yeah, as small as you can get it. That's
Small
right.
as you can get it, and then I'm going to secure the one side with the pin so it doesn't escape on me. And then we'll turn the other. With a nice finger press to keep it in. Just sort of snugging it right up to that seam. Another pin. And now we can slip stitch that. Whoops. We can slip stitch that edge. Let me put another knot in the thread. That really wasn't nice to come out like that, was it?
These little ones are not easy to do.
You know, after working for so many years now in fashion dolls, this was really a revelation to go back to this small.
Yeah,
It was.
but it's a good exercise.
It
to do.
is. It
Because either
is.
you use it or you lose it.
Yep. So I'm just doing a little slip stitch down here like that. Just really catching one thread on the right side here. You can see there's one little catch here, a little catch here. And you
All
put
right,
that
so
with the camera.
shall we finish this
Yes.
up and come back?
Yeah. Okay, we've sewn up, done our slip stitching on the back seam so it's nice and neat. And now I'm going to just barely turn down the raw edge of the upper edge here. One time, I'm finger pressing it. I'm getting rid of the whiskers that are coming off here. And we're going to go finger pressing across that edge, just turning down a little bit, and then we're going to turn it down again so that you're forming a little casing for our cotton ribbon, which is going to pull up the top of the drawers. So this time we're just going to running stitch that across and right on the hemline, right on the fold. So we'll start out by hiding our knot inside here, flicking that end of the thread back up there, and of course, I swear thread can find any pin anywhere.
Oh,
It's just like a magnet. Okay, so now we're going to be doing nice little running stitches because this will be visible on the front.
So these are
And
tiny
these
little
are tiny little,
uniformed.
yes, running stitches. The needles are nice and sharp so they can really penetrate
Otherwise,
the red.
it would not work.
Oh, no. Is that right? Yes.
How many stitches per inch do you think you're doing?
Ooh, I think I'm probably doing, well, let's just find out. Here's an inch, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, 8 to 9.
Yeah, that's tiny little stitches.
Yes, it is. It is, but it's easy. The other thing I'm using 50 weight Orifle thread, which is very fine, and of course a fine needle. So that all goes together. And when you use fine thread and fine needle, you find it's almost invisible.
Yeah,
I mean, look at this on the front.
Yeah, it looks great.
It looks beautiful. It's hardly there.
So we're going to go around.
Yep. And
that,
then I'm
and
going
then-
to show you how to thread your ribbon through, and then these drawers are finished.
Okay.
So-
well, we'll come back once
Okay.
this is finished, and we will put the string in.
Okay, we've got the casing turned down. We've got the teeny tiny little running stitches here that's going to hold the fold down. And then we have to thread.
And you went down and finished the closure too. Was that done? No, that was already done.
that was
already done.
We
See,
already did that part.
That seemed like that was yesterday.
Yes, it could be, but it wasn't. It was just a little earlier than this. So anyway, I'm going to find the trick is when you're running this needle is you've got a seam here that's going one direction. So you don't want to take your needle this way because you're going to run into a place you can't pass. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so we're
To
going
me,
to
it did.
start on the edge so that that fold is going to be, and I've threaded my large eye needle with this teeny tiny cotton thread, cotton tape.
Kind of a dull.
Yeah, it's actually a crewel needle, I think, for crewel embroidery. And then we're just going to run the head of the needle, not the point of the needle, down, and we'll just keep working that down.
You don't want to get stuck there, so you did that right.
Yeah, so we're not stuck, we're passing that up. And now we can go ahead and work that down. And now we just have to cleverly pass this. There we are. And we are, if I can get the other end of the tape out,
It'll do it.
it'll do it. Just be
Just have to
patient.
work it.
Yeah, there we are. Okay. So now we have our casing in, and now I've been working on the inside all this time, so now I'm going to turn it to the outside. And again, this fabric finger presses so that we don't have to worry about hitting with the heat yet. And there are your little drawers, all
Let me
finished.
get to it. I'm sorry, I just had a little. Those look adorable. Now, the question is, will they fit her?
I hope. I do hope so, after all of this.
I mean,
No.
she doesn't change much size, but
No,
it
she's
could be
pretty
a little,
much
tiny bit of a
a
variation,
tiny bit of variation,
but not much.
no. But they come here, they come right up where they're supposed to in the front, and we'll snug them up in the back. And you might want to cut your tie strings a little
Because
bit
you could use that
shorter.
for something else too.
Yeah, true. If you're clever and
Thrifty.
thrifty.
I don't know if I'm clever, but I'm thrifty.
Thrifty. You know the thrifty part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my little scrap bags, and I put the stuff in it, and then I use it.
Pull it out when
Okay.
you need something.
So I think that really worked beautifully.
Didn't that work great?
That worked
Yeah.
great.
Yep. So there she is, back and front. Hopefully they're not, I made them short so that they come just to her knees or just a little above, so that her dresses are going to cover.
But
You
if they
might
poke
see a
out a little,
tiny
girl,
little bit of
that would be okay
stuff.
for
That'd be
a- for a
okay
girl.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And If you
Okay.
hear sound effects, it's somebody's having their nap while we're working.
Yes. Okay. We'll be back with petticoat. Okay, now that we have our drawers done, we have the half slip or petticoat to do, and that's very quick. So I've taken my fabric, I've already cut it out, I folded it right sides together, not that there's a right or a wrong side to this fabric.
At this point, there will be.
Yeah, but there will be eventually, because we're gonna put the seam in, and it goes from the dot down to the bottom. And in this case, when I'm doing this, I like to take a little bit larger than a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because I'm gonna roll this back and slip stitch it like we did the back of the drawers. So this is just a little bit of a running back stitch here. When running back stitch, I go 2 stitches forward, 1 back, and it kind of locks in that seam. You know, I always think, well, it's going to be so easy to take out hand stitch. It's not. You can take out machine stitches much faster
yes.
than you can hand stitches, because they're locked in there.
They knew
and
how to do that.
They did. So I always hate taking out any hand stitches. So 2 stitches forward, 1 back, and then when I open up, you'll see it's a nice seam.
Bixby's dreaming about all kinds of stuff.
He is.
I should show this look.
The tongue. The tongue is the best. I love his tongue. Okay, so there's our seam on the right side. You can see how nice
and tight.
tight it is. Okay, so we're not going to turn it, however, because now I'm going to open it up, and I can get my fingernails to work here, and we're going to open it up as if it were sewn all the way to the top. And again, finger press, and then we're going to take and turn it back again.
No, this could be a little tricky.
Yes,
But
just a
it
little
can be done.
fiddly.
And what was this? What was the seam allowance you did for this?
I did about a 3/8 instead of a 1/4.
Okay.
Actually, I can use a tool to do this, my pen. Nice and even looking.
I think you've gotten it
I
pretty
think so too.
pretty even.
I think I've got, oh, no, it just slipped out on me. Okay, we'll just make one little correction here, and it'll be ready to slip stitch up the back. Well, come on, cooperate.
See, I probably wouldn't pin that. I'd probably just do it.
Yes. Okay, maybe just joining that that train of thought here
you know,
shortly.
Because by the time you do all the pins, you just
You gotta,
struggle.
right. Okay,
The
so
struggle is real.
it is real, especially when you're doing it in front of somebody. I mean, you know, I could fiddle around at home and not have a problem with it, but because
Well,
it's
that
on
just makes them
camera,
feel better about themselves.
doesn't I hope?
I mean,
It's not
trust me,
such a piece
I've
of
made
cake.
so many people feel better about themselves. I didn't know you didn't know how to
How to do
do
that.
something.
Yes. Okay. So now we're just going to do what we did before, was take one stitch on the right side, run it up through the fold, and then back out. And it'll give us a nice, neat finish here, which wouldn't have been done on the old dolls. It just would have been a flat-out
Well,
raw
I mean,
edge.
some of them had beautiful, fabulous clothes, but
Yeah.
most of them did not.
No. Do you think it has to do with whether they were a commercial doll or whether they...
Most of what we
But-
see in original clothes are commercially made dolls, and they're just
Yeah.
made to. But then I've seen, some
incredible sewing.
miniature
Yes.
work, and
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
detail you can think of.
Yes. Well, like on the doll that I'm going to show, that one wardrobe that's so amazing.
Oh yes, that.
Yes.
But that's still kind of child-made,
Well, parts of it
Parts-
are, but
parts of it are, yeah.
but parts of it
family project.
blow me away on how
Yeah. Oh yes,
amazing they
absolutely.
are.
We'll show
Okay.
that maybe tomorrow or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see. All right, so
shall we
let's finish.
this.
Yeah,
and
then
we
I'll
will
be
be
back.
back.
Yep.
For the next step.
Yep. Okay, now we've got our back seam sewn. We've got the edges turned under and slip stitched, and I'll show you the other side, what it looks like. You can hardly see my stitches. I hope that's true on the camera.
That's
I can
true.
hardly see my stitches.
Now, if they have a 42-inch.
Right,
Screen,
TV, you
maybe,
might see the
maybe.
little unevenness. And then I've taken the bottom edge, just like we did on the drawers. I turned it up twice here, so we have a finished edge. And then I'm going to go in and slip stitch this just like I slip stitched this back edge. So we'll count that that's all turned up nicely. Now I'm going to put 2 rows of gathering, you see on the pattern right here, across the top. So I've threaded up, and I'm just doing not gigantic stitches, because it depends on how long your stitch is as to what your gather looks like. And on this tiny little girl, it's better to have a little bit of short stitches, because then you get a really nice,
Sure.
a really
to
nice
scale.
gather. Yeah. On a much bigger doll, I would be doing much longer stitches than this, but I just run along. And it's not like when you're cartridge pleating where they have to be matching totally equally. It's not as critical here as it is on that.
It's not as critical, but it's nice if
Yeah,
they're.
they should be fairly consistent. Of course, that has all to do with practice.
Practice makes
Practice. It does.
Practice makes
Yes.
perfect.
Yep. And if you watch me sew, you notice my left hand does a lot of the work. It's not just my left hand is not just holding. If you watch, it is also manipulating the fabric up and down so that you see this
Makes it easier to do it.
Makes it a lot easier. And so actually my right hand is more static in this case, and my left hand's doing most of the work. There's just something to think about when you're sewing, is how you're manipulating your movements. Okay, so there is row 1. And you rarely ever want to do just one row of gathering, because it won't lay flat enough for you to sew over it. One row, it's all over the place, but 2 rows makes it flat. Sometimes
Yes.
I even do 3 rows if I
Yes.
really want that flattened out. So now I have run out of thread, so I need to rethread with my handy threader here.
Well, we'll thread it and we'll come back.
Yep. Okay, as I was getting ready to re-thread for that second row of gathering, I said to Michael, I said, maybe it would be good to talk about threading a needle properly and how to handle your thread. Now I'm using for this 80 weight Orfil, and this is Italian thread, and it's really about the only thing I sew very much with anymore because it's so smooth. But it's only smooth when it's coming off the spool in the right way. So when you're thinking about threading, I always take note of which of your end because you want it to come off and thread into your needle like this.
Directly.
Not backwards.
Right. You don't want to cut it off and then
Reverse and
right.
like thread from this end. Then you're backwards, and then you will end up with knots and all kinds of things. I've got
it's smooth when you...
It's smooth from that direction. That's the way it was intended to go onto your needle.
A lot of people may not know that.
No, I bet they don't.
Because it's just thread.
It's just thread, but it's a very important point.
It is.
Because there's nothing like trying to sew along and it's not pulling well. It's knotting up, and they go, oh, I bet it's threaded wrong. So this is the end. I still have it in my hand. It came off of the thread. So I am going to be laying this into my needle threader like this. Just loosely, not... And then I'm going to push down, and I can tell the thread jumped, which means it did go through the eye. Now sometimes this needle threader, for whatever reason, will decide not to thread the first time. So you just
do it again.
You just do it again. And
I love mine. I love mine.
It. I know you do.
It's one of the best
things you ever found.
Well, that and the cricket and the pressing mat.
Yes, yeah. All these little things that make sewing so much easier.
And then the Weehaw glue.
And the Weehaw glue is the best.
It is.
Best. Okay, so now I have done my little thing on threading. I'm going to sew another row of gathering about 1/8 of an inch below the one I did before. And why don't we come back when this is finished and we'll apply the waistband, and we're almost done. Well, we've got lace to put on yet.
Well, we're almost done done for the beginning.
Yes, right. We're almost done with the underwear.
Right. Okay.
Okay, since we've been gone, I put in my second row of gathering here. You can see now I have 2 threads to pull. I also did the hem, slip stitch that in place, and now I can apply the lace over the top of that, just like we did on the drawers. So I'm gonna hide my note. I'm gonna hide my knot in the seam back here. And come up. And then we want just that peak of a bit of lace.
Just a little over.
A little bit overhang there.
You can almost follow just the pattern.
Yeah, as it goes up, it just touches, and that's about right. So we're just going on with the running stitch. And that heading on the lace is sitting right about where the top of the fold of the hem is.
The heading is the top of the lace.
The heading is this. And in this nice French lace, it's actually got pull strings in it, which we're not using now, but we will use.
Well, we can use them sometime.
Sometime. It's very handy. Looks much neater than if you tried to sew a gathering at the top. So anyway, we're just gonna stitch this along.
So we'll get that stitched and we'll be back.
Yep. Okay, now we've got our lace on the bottom, and that's all finished. Looks really pretty. I've
Hold
just
it
got
still.
a little bit of scalloping showing
Yeah,
below
that
the
shows
hem.
really nice.
And now when I do the waistband, I like to find the center front, which is easy enough. Just fold it in half. And then I put a little pin in there to mark that. And so that I know I'm on my center front. Do the same thing to the waistband. I fold it in half. There's my center front of my waistband. It's going to go right there, and I'm going to pin that right in place. Then I know how much to pull up on the gathering, so we're going to start on this side, and there's enough left over here that I can pull the other side too. If there's not enough, you can pull the whole thing to the end. But since I've got...
And it's not going to break.
And it's not, no, it's not going to break. So then we're going to place it so we've got about that much hanging over, which will be on the inside when we're finished.
It's just what a
scant quarter, I would say.
Okay.
So a scant quarter is what that is. And then we can arrange the gathering. And a lot of times on a petticoat like this, I'll have more in the back than the front. These are not a very full petticoat because the little dresses are very slim. So it's not like you're going to be fitting big gathered skirts over them. So better to keep it slim, not so full. Okay. I'll do the same thing here. About that much over. Pin that in place. I probably look at my gathers on the inside and make sure that there's not any bunched up any place. And then we'll pin that. Yeah. Okay. Then I'm going to take my needle and I'm just going to do a running stitch. Not with that one.
Oh boy, she looks like she's being really abused. Little Blanche.
Help me.
Help me.
Help me.
Give me a face.
Yes. Let's thread up a new needle so we don't have to have that change threads in the middle. Okay. You know how slick that works. It's just so slick.
Oh, I love those.
And by the way, the ones at Joann's that look something like this are nothing like this.
No,
they don't work.
Yeah,
It's got to have the real thing here.
I think these are German, aren't they?
I thought they were Japanese.
Oh, Japanese.
They're Japanese. Clover is the big Japanese.
Oh yeah, they're Japanese. Yeah.
Even says Japan.
Yeah.
No.
They're like a Toyota.
Yeah, they are.
They'll be around for
a long time. Yes. Okay. So then we're just going to distribute our gathers a little bit and start doing our running stitch to get. Then this is a quarter of an inch down from the top. The only thing those pins are doing is making sure that the gathers are fairly evenly spaced, so we don't get bunches of them.
Well, and if it doesn't work out right, we will redo it.
My favorite part.
Yeah.
Is the redos.
We're gonna sew this up, and we'll be back. Okay, now we're almost finished with our first set of underwear.
and hopefully maybe the last set of underwear for this little girl. But anyway, we've got her lace on, we sewed the waistband on, wrapped it over, tucked it under, and actually I went in and trimmed the seam just a little bit inside so I could get a really narrow waistband out of it. And the last thing we're going to do is use our large needle and our tape again, and we're going to take the eye of the needle and thread it through the waistband. And then this isn't really going to gather up because I'm pretty sure this waistband just fits her. But it does make a nice, easy closure without having to make buttons and thread loops and all that kind of thing. So.
And again, most mignonettes would just have a gathering stitch.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even have any of this. It would be like 3 stitches and it was on.
It was on her. Yeah. Okay, so there it comes out the other end. We'll unthread that without pulling the whole thing out. There we go. So it's going to sit very flat here, and then let's take our ghost girl here.
That's Blanche.
Blanche, oh Blanche. We'll take Blanche and we'll put it on. And again, I said that we didn't do very much gathering on this skirt because you're going to find the dresses are very straight, so very A-line. So this will just tie our little bow in the back. And the other thing on the ends of this is I'll take a little bit of the glue and just touch the ends.
Our little wee-haw?
Little wee-haw.
Little
we'll
wee-haw?
just finish that end so it doesn't unravel at all, which I think is a good thing to do.
Little old wee-haw.
Yeah. Now, Cheryl, get your fingernails in there and pull out the rest of this.
I think
there we go.
Got it.
We've got it. She's dressed. She's
Yeah.
saying, "Hooray!
Yeah.
I have my
All right.
first set of
Now
underwear."
we're gonna start on the
We're gonna start.
the fun stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna do dresses.
All right.
Okay. So there you are.
We'll be back.